Hey, everybody. Well, welcome to the PodShop. So, if you've been on LinkedIn, if you've been paying attention to the tech news, you've definitely been hearing a lot about AI, content creators like ChatGPT and a few others. They've been getting a lot of attention lately. And there's been a lot of stuff about, for example, educators worrying about how students might use these technologies to cheat in their writing assignments. You have marketers wondering how AI might affect their content creation, and copywriters wondering if maybe they're going to be replaced by AI in the not too distant future. Needless to say, this technology raises all sorts of interesting questions. Today, I am with my good friend Adam Robinson, who is back on the podcast. Adam runs Strategexe, which is a marketing consultancy, and he works as a fractional CMO for all kinds of different companies. So, Adam, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeremy. And I'm so excited to have a conversation with you about this topic. We're going to have a lot of fun today, so I can't wait to dive in. And of course, thanks for having me back as a guest on your podcast. It is always an honor to come and chat with you. So thanks for having me back.
You're welcome. You're always welcome on the show, of course. So, and typically on the Pod Shop, I'm talking more specifically about podcasting stuff, B2B podcasting stuff, and I think that'll come up. But this topic's just so interesting, and you and I have been talking about it just not recording it, just talking about it in other ways that I thought, let's get on the pod and have a discussion about this. So let's just dive right in, and
Love it.
I'd love to start with just your thoughts generally about AI and AI content creation and how it might affect the world of marketing.
Sure, absolutely. So, just to give a little bit of perspective for the folks who are listening to this and don't know me, I am one that I love authenticity in real human relationships. That is the way that we are wired. And I only share that because up until I'm going to say 2 months ago, I really resisted using AI to help create anything. My thought as a marketer was it's not human, it's not real. People can tell the difference. They're going to crave that human to human communication and things like that. And just for perspective as well, I don't know, early in 22, I actually got a trial to Jasper AI, which is one of the content creation tools that are available. And I used it for a little bit, but I could never get my head around this. So I'm not sure what really clicked for me a couple months ago, but it was this light bulb moment when we were looking at some of our production costs, especially when it comes to leveraging copywriters and folks to create content for our clients and looking at some things and even getting a whiff that some of these folks we were paying a premium were literally just using chat gpt or Jasper
Mm.
to go and create the content. And it's like, okay, wait a second, why would I be paying these folks a premium to go through and do this if they're just writing this in 10 or 15 minutes and turning it around and charging me 2 hours worth of work for it? So that was part of the things that got me going down this path. Now, the other thing that's happened here that I think is relevant is that when most people are creating content, they're going to Google, they're doing different searches online and stuff like that. Well, guess what? That's still using AI and machine learning to go get that information. So, what really is the difference of using AI or machine learning that can scrape millions, maybe even thousands of web pages, blog posts, resources on a topic to use that to go through and be the basis for the content that what you're going to use to write said piece of content? So, anyway, it's been very fascinating. So here's what I can tell you, Jeremy. We now use ChatGPT, we use Jasper. Our team uses this as the basis for a lot of the content we create. Now, when we get this from these resources, it is not the final product at all. A human still has to go and take that information and make it consumable by a human. Now, some of this stuff as it comes out, it is really, really good content, but it takes a human to know the inputs to put in, how to stitch this together, how to piece it together and make it readable, consumable, relevant, even SEO optimized if that's what you want for human consumption. So the tool is absolutely amazing. And in my opinion, content creators who learn how to leverage this tool are going to be way ahead of those who do not. I don't think it's a matter of if or when. If a person still wants to create content manually and do that, that's fine. But I think a person who knows how to wield this tool is going to be able to create a better product faster, and that they're going to be the ones that are winning in the marketplace. So that's some background in what
Okay.
we're currently doing and how I'm using that. Even with the blog content that I'm writing for Strategexe, I am using Jasper.ai to go through and help do that. And what I'm finding has also been amazingly helpful is leveraging ChatGPT plus Jasper, layering these things on top of each other has
Mm.
been amazing.
Okay, so let's dig into some of the things you're saying. So first of all, you mentioned that part of what sparked your interest in the first place is that you were paying writers and then you realized, hey, they're just using this stuff and
Yeah.
so how did you know that? How did you know that they were using Jasper or
So
whatever?
I heard from other folks that that's what a lot of people were doing. So I don't have direct verification from that,
Okay.
but it makes sense that that was happening. And that has also been, and I don't want to mention the name of the service we were using to go through and produce our content, but they've also made some pretty big shifts in their business model in
Mm.
the last few months based on some of this happening. So I don't have direct evidence, but there's a lot of things that point to that.
Okay. So the next thing I wanted to dig into a little bit is you mentioned that, you really value authenticity,
Mhm.
right? In marketing and in content and so on. I
Yeah.
think and I think, most people do, right? And to my mind, one of the questions that AI raises is creating quote unquote authentic content compatible with using AI
Mhm.
or not necessarily. And I'm not looking for like a yes or no answer here,
Yeah.
but we'll get into that more in a second. But I think that that's kind of an underlying question.
Sure.
But in any case, I think I take your point that there are other kinds of AI tools that we've been using for a long time, like the example that you gave with just a search engine, right?
Mhm.
So I think the point you were making is AI is kind of doing the same thing. It's just that instead of getting a bunch of search results, it's kind of already doing that behind the scenes and then assimilating what it's found into, coherent sentences and paragraphs and so on.
Mhm.
Am I right so far as on the right track?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So, I mean, I just want to push back on that a little bit and get your opinion here because, I mean, I think that there is an important difference in that yes, you're using the AI functionality of a search engine to get information in the first place,
Mhm.
but then that's where the human actor is stepping in and having to take time to look at what you found and determine that, okay, well, this source is credible, this source is not, or this bit of information is interesting. But there's a lot of human judgment that goes
Sure.
into that, right? And
Mhm.
then when you actually go to write the piece, just I would argue that the act of writing, of putting words down on the screen, that's a very kind of particular thing to do and engages the mind in a particular way. You know, my point overall is that in a way an AI may be doing something kind of similar, but the AI is doing it. So you no longer have the human engaged in that more elaborate process of
Mhm.
choosing words and putting thoughts together. You know what I mean? So it to me it feels a little bit like you're outsourcing that kind of the thinking part of composing a piece.
So, first of all, I agree with everything that you're saying here. And here is where I think that those who know how to wield these tools and learn how to wield them effectively are going to be the ones who are going to be successful with them. So with both ChatGPT, Jasper, you can go in there and chat and you can say, write me a blog post about XYZ. and it'll spit you out something. A person would be foolish to take what is spit out and go put that out there and think that that's going to be a good piece for human consumption. It's a good starting point. But I think what has to happen, if you're starting with something like that, or with Jasper, if you got one of their premium versions, they've got something called Boss Mode that allows you to go through with all these workflows and build out topics and headlines and all this stuff, right? So it's more advanced at this point with that workflow, that you use that almost as an assistant to go through and help you do this, because any bit of information that AI is going to bring back to you, a human still has to read that. Sometimes you may even need to fact check it and go say, is this exactly correct or not? Which, even if you went and researched something on a blog or a resource, as you said, you would have to determine the credibility of that site, that author, and things like that. So when a person learns how to go use this AI content generating tools as a resource to gather information and data faster, and maybe use that as a basis, and then once they've got that base level, it's like, you know what? This is missing. I need to go back and find more detail on this. And whether you use AI, whether you use a search engine or whatever. So to me, it is nothing more than a tool that is going to put information and starting points in the hands of an effective content creator faster. And in my opinion, if they're using it properly, it's going to allow them to even be more creative, because as they go through and look at certain things or whatever, they may read what AI puts out. Like, you know what? I didn't think of that. That's really fascinating. Let me go research that further. Or based on what this AI generator put out, this is something I need to dive in deeper to in this piece that I hadn't thought of before, or even something I've never even known about. So you are correct in that this information, it does have to be used and handled carefully. And in and of itself, I don't think it's ready for pure human consumption. There's got to be human oversight, creativity, thought, looking at that.
Hmm.
And part of it too, AI doesn't know your target audience. Now, you can put in all kinds of parameters in the prompts and things like that. Into a sense, into a degree, they may know your audience based on some of those things, but ultimately, there does need to be human oversight for this to be effective. So we're actually in agreement on all of this stuff. I think that this is just a
Hmm.
tool, and it's how it's leveraged that's going to pick the people who are going to succeed with it.
Okay. And so if I'm hearing you correctly, it's that at least so far you're finding these tools to be most useful as a way to gather information, is to kind of jumpstart a project, say.
Correct.
And
Or
then, yeah.
yeah, and in some cases, Jeremy, I mean, I will use them to go through and start a piece, right? To go through,
Hmm.
hey, write a blog post about this. But then more often than not, what's happening, I'll take that initial piece of content again, and it's different whether it comes from ChatGPT or it comes from Jasper. It's
Yeah.
two completely different things. But often there is a need for, oh, we need more paragraphs here, or we need more stuff, or depending on the topic as well. So here's a real world example. Today we're recording this on January 17th. I literally put out a piece of content today on the Strategexe blog that's basically three reasons why you should reject virtue signaling. I'm not a
Hmm.
big fan of virtue signaling because I think in many cases it's disingenuous. I used AI to help me go through and write this piece. Now, AI in and of itself cannot write that piece, but there is plenty of information that it can go get for me. I can say, write a paragraph about this or write a paragraph about that to help get things going. But then I literally had to go through and take some of that stuff from my perspective as a human and what I wanted to say, intertwine it with that. I probably spent 35, maybe 40 minutes on that piece. I think it was 700 or 800 words. Had I gone through and written that all by myself, especially with some of the citations, the background information, it would have taken me a couple of hours. So I put something out there that I feel is better than what I could have done on my own with the use of this tool. And I used Jasper and I used ChatGPT and I also used Google as well because I wanted to use some references and sites out there. In fact, I found a great one on, I think it was Psychology Today, American Psychology Association, where they themselves went through and made my point about the dangers of virtue
Mm,
signaling, both for individuals and corporations. So there's just a real world example. What I can also share with you is that some of the recent content we've created for our clients in a variety of industries using these tools, we have gotten feedback from them that this content is some of the best content we have delivered to them.
mm,
And we've always delivered really good content, but
hmm.
the depth and the length of which we can do things now with AI, it's just different. So overall, the feedback that we're getting is really good. And what I'll also say, the more that a person uses this technology to create content, the better they get at it. And the more you learn how to work in that ecosystem to get the information and the starting point that you want.
Okay, really interesting. And so, in the example that you gave us about that piece about virtue signaling,
Mhm.
so Jasper AI didn't technically write it for you,
No, not at all.
insofar as it didn't like spit out a coherent thing, and you're just like, okay, cool, publish it. What exactly did it do?
Yeah, so great question. So let me think about this because I wrote this on Sunday. So essentially, I went in and I think I started with ChatGPT and Jasper with both of their chats, and I just said, write a blog about the danger of virtue signaling. And it just put out something, and I always compare the differences between the two of them.
Yeah.
And then I took that basis, read it, said, this is interesting, this is interesting, actually combined some of those elements together. I edited them up. And then from there, I went through and I specifically asked ChatGPT to say, write a paragraph about three specific dangers of virtue signaling. And then it wrote this really great resource that was there. So I took that, took what else was existing, and then I interjected and wove that in. So always when I'm putting that in, I may be copying and pasting initially, but a
Hmm.
human still has to go back and look through and make sure that all those concepts are woven together effectively. Now, in most cases, the content it puts out, it's really good. It's very readable, it's done
Mm-hmm.
correctly, and things like that, but they still got to be woven together in a way that makes sense. And then from there, I went to Google, did some additional research from that. And then on top of that, I layered in my perspectives and personal examples and things like that, did some
Mm-hmm.
additional citations. So, no, it wasn't click, copy, paste, put it on
Right.
the blog, here you go. It's never going to do that. I think that there's people who think that it can. If you want a low quality, just okay piece of content, I guess go through and do that. But if you want something that's truly going to resonate and add your authentic voice, your perspective to it, you're going to have to work with it. You can't just click a button and put something out there
Right.
like it's really coming from you.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Really interesting. So, in a way, the central difference between the quote unquote old school way, which is just the writer sitting down and at a blank screen and just starting with the first word and then writing it and so on. The difference between that and what you've described is that you're functioning more like, I mean, use the word weaving, right? It's
Mhm.
almost like a weaver, or you're putting together the puzzle pieces, or an editor, right?
Yeah.
You're taking all these things and kind of putting them together in a coherent way, that's really interesting. And I think, it sounds like a legitimate way to do this, and you've been getting good results, right? And good feedback. So that means that it's working for you so far. What's interesting to me, and I'm a little biased here because I came up as like a trained writer.
Sure.
And so, and I'm old enough so that I've been doing this, long before even really the internet was a
Mhm.
thing. That's how old I am, right? But I guess I like to believe, and to a certain extent I think that this is true, that when we talk about authenticity in content, or something that's going to stand out, that's like has a point of view and is unique,
Mhm.
that I still think of that in a way as that that can only really come from a person, a
Hmm.
mind sitting down and composing.
Yep.
You're using inputs from other, places, but when it comes right down to it, what is it that makes a piece of content unique or stand out or have like a unique voice that can be recognized as, oh, that's a Jeremy thing or an Adam thing?
Yeah.
My bias is still that there's something about the thought process and the rhythm of putting words together in a
Yep.
kind of like almost zen like way, you know what I mean, that's where that comes from,
Hmm.
and that the process that you're describing, totally legitimate, but that's more like you're still taking pieces of what ChatGPT and Jasper has spit out. You're not just hitting publish, but you are taking a line here, a paragraph there, putting it in. That's quite different in kind
Hmm.
than the writer sitting down and sort of composing as it,
Sure.
spools out of your mind. I'm not saying that one is necessarily better than the other, but I
Yeah.
but I do think that it's a difference worth noting. Again, my own bias is kind of like leading me to push back on this a little bit and kind of be like, well, isn't there a difference there? Like, or maybe not, or maybe the difference doesn't matter as much as I think it does.
Yeah. So I think what you bring up is a concern that a lot of people have. And part of the way that I look at this is that there are some pieces of content that it's always going to require that process by which you talk about. In my opinion, that's writing a sales email or some social media content or even like a creative novel. Sure, AI can do those kind of things, but to me, those are uniquely human endeavors, and they're going to require that unique input to go in and things like that. But when I think about the way that I would write a blog post or a research paper or whatever, I've got to go somewhere and get that information. I still have to have inputs coming in for me to put that on a sheet of paper or a page on my browser, right? So regardless of where that comes from, doesn't make a difference. Whether Chat GPT or Jasper is giving me that basis of information by scanning 1,000 web pages, or if I get this from my own research, I'm still getting that information from somewhere else. Now, in my opinion, those that are writing a piece, if they've thought the outline out, know what they need to get or whatever, I think these tools just make it faster and more efficient to get more information and maybe even aggregated data. Now, where this is going to be a little bit challenging is garbage in, garbage out. What happens if AI is going and looking at about a bunch of web pages that's a bunch of garbage that's out there and just completely not true information or censored information? You get this back and you say, oh, this is true. Well, do you have any idea if it's really true or not? So that's, I
Yeah.
think, one of the concerns that may be that we're relying on a machine to give us this information. But in that token, it's no different even than what we're doing now because Google's going to return the results it tells us to return. So it's a very unique thing in that regard. So in my thinking, Jeremy, is that there are just some pieces of content that a human is going to have to go and sit down old school, especially with novels and really creative storytelling and things like that. But my encouragement to you would be experiment with writing some pieces of content using this and develop your own rhythm and flow. And I think you will find that you're still going to have to be creative. You're still going to have to weave these things together. You still got to think about all these inputs that are coming in. And in my opinion, you adding that human perspective, that insight, those different elements is what really brings all that together, and it's going to make your piece stand out differently. Even though some of the inputs may be the same as another human writing an article about the same thing, it's still going to be uniquely mine or yours because it was your mind and brain that put all that together. So
Yeah. Okay. You're still the puzzle doer, right? The
yeah.
weaver. Yeah. And
Mhm.
and sure, no doubt about it. I mean, I also wanted to explore a little bit like the limitations of AI, which we've already been talking about. And so, one example I have in my world as a podcast producer, the kind of content that we're creating is really based fundamentally on discussion.
Mhm.
two or more people having a discussion, of course, like what we're doing right now,
Yep.
you know? And what I like about this kind of content is that it's unscripted and largely spontaneous. I mean, we did a little prep for this. I sent you some questions like 15 minutes ago, right? And we've been talking about this a little bit, but it's not like we super carefully planned out what we're going to say. We're just talking here.
Correct.
And my my theory, I guess, and I think that this is just true, although I don't have like empirical data to back that up, is that what we're doing right now is a key element of strong content, in that it's unique because the way that we're discussing this is we're capturing like a moment
Yeah.
of discussion where ideas just kind of flow, right? And there's that spontaneity and authenticity because we're not, someone else didn't write this for us and we're just reading the script, right? This is purely just Adam and Jeremy kind of spitballing, and there'll never be another conversation exactly like this one. There'll be
Correct.
similar ones. You know what I mean?
I do.
That to me, like in my world, that's a big part of our value proposition, that you want to create unique content that's authentic and that's going to cut through. Capture conversations with people. That's like one of the best ways to do it. And I've been asking myself, like, okay, what about in the podcasting world? Like, how will AI play a role there?
Yeah.
And I don't really know. My guess, though, is that it's already playing a role more in the post production part of it, meaning once you've had the discussion and recorded it, then
Hmm.
you need to produce it and all that. There
Right.
are all kinds of tools that are making that easier and easier to do. But one of the limitations, as I see it, is that I don't see how AI could ever replace what we're doing now. In other words, two human beings having this real conversation. I I I don't want to say never, because who knows, the technology can go in all kinds of interesting ways,
Yeah.
but I don't see how you could replicate or replace what we're doing with AI. But what do you think? Maybe I'm just not seeing that.
So, in my opinion, all this AI stuff is going to help what you're doing with the podcasting business because, as we talked about a couple weeks ago, that knowledge is getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper because so many people have access to it. Whereas many years ago, people would pay a premium to go get a college degree because that's the only way you could access the knowledge. Well, my goodness, now you can go through and access all this knowledge from an AI source, Google, whatever. It's out there. And it's those that are going to be able to take that knowledge and make it applicable, that it's going to make sense in that content space. But going back to our initial conversation about the authenticity, nothing can replace human engagement in a human conversation like this. I can write all day long about virtue signaling challenges of it or whatever, like I did in that piece, but it's not going to come off the same way as me talking about it or having a conversation with another person. Because by the act of us doing this, you're going to share a thought, you're going to share a perspective that may prompt something new to me. You may help
Yeah.
me see something I haven't seen before, and the interaction between two humans just cannot be replaced on a sheet of paper. And this is what we want to see more of. And I think you see this evidenced in Instagram Reels, the stories on Facebook, and different areas where people want to see what is real world like. And I think in some cases, when we're really trying to connect with other humans, the imperfect, unscripted stuff sometimes is the best because that is what is real. So, from my perspective, we are going to continue to see video conversations like this, whether that's the basis of a podcast and then the audio is stripped out for the audio only version or whatever, people are going to look for, crave, and engage these kinds of content pieces, especially with the video, because it's more real and it's more natural and it's a way that we are biologically created to go through and communicate because as humans, we are communal beings, right? We need community, we need other people. And there's something about this kind of conversation where people can glean more from it, in my opinion. So I think that this is
Hmm.
only going to help or even propel even more video and spoken content as people crave to really connect with people. Because also in this conversation, people can see what I look like, they can see my mannerisms, they can
Yeah.
hear intonation and all that. And just as an example, earlier this week, I was recording a Loom video for one of my team members, asking them to go through and do something. And as it turns out, they had already solved this problem. I didn't even really need to record the
Mm.
Loom video to show them how to do it. And when I figured this out, the excitement and the just like, oh my gosh, you figured this out, Mark. That's fantastic. I went ahead and shared the Loom video with him
Hmm.
just because I wanted to hear that excitement, that surprise, that delight. That's like, way to go, guy. And you only get that sometimes in the moment. So you
Yeah.
just can't replicate these things.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Um, well, what could be interesting, I think I might try this as an experiment that for this episode, um, I use some software that automatically transcribes it. So I do get, a written version of this. And I'm wondering what would happen if I took that text, fed it into Jasper or ChatGPT and said, write a magazine style article based on this text and then just see what happens, right? Maybe, I mean, we're saying you can't use AI to replicate what we're doing here, two humans talking. But once you've captured that, that's where the AI maybe can come in and turn that into different kinds of content, or at least help you turn it into different kinds of content just to facilitate the process, right?
Yeah.
That could be interesting.
That would be interesting, Jeremy. So basically, you take the transcript of our conversation, feed that into the machine, and almost tell it to turn it into, like you said, a magazine style piece or a 1,000 word blog post or whatever. Yeah, I'll be very curious to get the follow up to see what that delivers to you. That'll be fun.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do that as an experiment and just see how well it works,
Yeah.
see how much time it saves me or not. And we'll talk about that another time. So, all right, Adam, so let's wrap things up. What's your main takeaway for marketers who are intrigued by all this AI stuff and wondering, should I be getting into this? What's in it for me? Just what's the main takeaway from our discussion?
So, number one, buckle up because change is coming whether you
Mm,
want it or not. The genie's out of the bottle. In fact, I'm not sure if the deal has actually been signed or not, but if what I read this morning was correct, it looks like ChatGPT and Bing have already got the signed agreement in place where now Bing is going to try and go head to head with Google, even more so by integrating that with their Bing search. So we are going to see some pretty dramatic shifts based on what AI can now do in marketing as a whole, but also with respect to the production of content. So, in my opinion, learning how to embrace and wield these tools as an asset to help you create better content faster. Do not think that you can just rely on this to do content for you. People will sniff that out, they're going to figure it out. But if you use it to produce better content and use it as a way to free up your creative ability, it's going to help you resonate more with your target audience. So there's still a lot of things that we don't know. I do believe that marketers need to be flexible. They do need to be open to change. I do believe that those who are willing to embrace these tools and use them effectively are going to be those that are going to win in the marketplace and stand out.
okay, awesome. Well, Adam, finally, how can folks reach out to you and connect if they want to chat about AI or marketing or whatever?
Yeah, great question. So I'm most active on LinkedIn. Just go look up Adam Robinson MBA on LinkedIn, or you can come to my website, which is strategexe.com, and that's spelled STRATEGEXE.com. Strategy and execution put together. So those are the two quickest ways for folks to reach out and find me.
Well, thank you so much for a great conversation. Really good stuff. And listeners, as always, thank you so much for listening. We'll have a lot of great episodes coming your way in the near future. So, Adam, thanks again.
You're welcome, Jeremy. Thanks for having me.